Chapter 457. Kishir's gaze landed on a square fully prepared for an elaborate welcome ceremony. Yudhir's eyes widened at the sight of a raised platform towering above the neatly seated dignitaries and the two people sitting there. For several years now, in events requiring the emperor's presence, the empress had typically represented him alongside Crown Prince Kashtian. However, Kashtian was nowhere to be seen on the highest platform of today's square. Instead, occupying the seat was none other than the Emperor Kalusa, the person who rightfully should be at the highest position in the empire. Clad in opulent ceremonial robes identical to the empress's, the emperor looked significantly thinner than when last seen. However, he didn't appear to be someone on the brink of death. I thought he would surely be in the imperial palace, considering he was said to have collapsed. Yudhir wasn't the only one surprised. The cavalry members, nobles, and everyone else couldn't take their eyes off of the emperor. Despite sensing the weight of those countless gazes, the emperor quietly stayed ahead, as if he were alone. In a lowered voice, Yudhir asked while alternately gazing at the two brothers. Is it all right for His Majesty, the Emperor, to make an appearance like this? Of course not. If they had told me they would arrange such an event, I would have somehow opposed it and interfered. They caught me off guard. Although his tone sounded light, as if finding the situation absurd, his eyes didn't convey the same levity. Yudhir couldn't even begin to guess the complex emotions Kishir must have been experiencing. Having spent 10 years as a cavalry commander, Yudhir thought he was fairly adept at dealing with people. Yet, now he was at a loss for words. Noticing Yudhir's silence, Kishir blinked several times before cracking a smooth smile. Are you worried about me right now? ... It's fine. What's done is done. This event is a rare opportunity His Majesty has provided for the cavalry. Our job now is to not waste it. Yes. If His Majesty knew me, I also know his temperament. If there were even the slightest possibility he could collapse here, he wouldn't have made such a bold choice, given the circumstances. That's the kind of man he is. If you say so, then it must be so, Yudhir responded with a small nod. Understood. However, I will remain vigilant and keep an eye on our surroundings just in case. It feels like I have gained the most reliable barrier in the world. Thank you. Kishir burst into a broad smile. His hair was a mess, ruffled as he ran his fingers through his bangs as if trying to contain himself, but Yudhir said nothing. The horse-drawn carriages carrying the cavalry members reached the square, naturally following the wave of cheers. Stepping down from the carriage, Kishir looked around and waved his hand, exuding an air of calm as if he had known about this all along. The cheers from the crowd grew exponentially louder at the sight of the dazzling handsome Duke of Paleta. Soldiers blocking the street suddenly became more active, thanks to people trying to get closer to Kishir. Seeing Kishir move forward with unshakable confidence, the members also quickly shed their anxiety and followed him with visibly brightened expressions. Without a single word of explanation, everything proceeded as if it had been perfectly planned from the beginning. Yudhir followed just a step behind Kishir, quickly scanning his surroundings. Directly below the platform where the emperor sat stood the cavalry members in the capital, including Steiber, whom he hadn't seen in a while. They must have already known about today's welcoming ceremony. Even so, not a word reached us. Emperor Kalusa sure prepared this meticulously, Yudhir thought. In the VIP seats filling the square were not only nobles but also mages draped in courtly robes, imperial knights, and high-ranking officers within the imperial army. Yudhir picked out familiar faces among them and paused momentarily when his eyes landed on a particular spot. It's been a while since I have seen him. Apeto's first son, Ashes. I wonder if Revlin is here too. Ashes, who had been focusing almost entirely on external activities since the Apeto incident, curbing his father, the Duke's influence, attended as a representative of his family today as well. Though he was only a step away from the dukedom, his complexion seemed much worse than before. Well, he died not long ago in his previous life. It's understandable. But today's ashes looked particularly sharp and gloomy, Uther thought. Revlin sat at a distance that made it hard to consider him part of Ash's family, alongside his lover. He sat closest to the cavalry's capital unit, laughing and jesting, a face filled with both pride and envy. It seems he regrets not being able to formally attend today's ceremony as he's still a temporary member, Uther pondered. We will be accepting new members soon, so he should be able to join us next time. While thinking about when would be the best time to share this good news with Revlin, Uther suddenly turned his head, sensing a hostile aura prickling his skin. Not a significant threat, but when he looked, it was none other than Kiol the Diarca, sitting beside Duke Diarca, glaring at him ineffectively. Even from such a distance, he managed to find me among the members, Uther thought, noticing Kiol's lips moving as if muttering something. It seemed Kiol was very unhappy that Uther had returned alive and well. However, given that no oath magic was triggered, it seemed that he had improved his harmful language habits somewhat. Just as Uther was about to dismiss him as unworthy for further attention, he noticed a new emblem on the chest plate of Kiol's armor and narrowed his eyes. Isn't that the symbol for the Crown Prince's escort knights? Though distant, he was sure of it. Ever since one of his eyes had opened to the eye of magic, Uther had realized that he occasionally saw things more clearly than before. It was an ability he had discovered unknowingly in Tenno, allowing him to read expressions remarkably well even in the dark, and to see distant landmarks that others could barely confirm. The emblem of Kiol's armor was unmistakably that of the Crown Prince's escort knights. Did the Diarca family decide to attach Kiol to Castian? Whether it rained or shined, the person who should be by Castian's side was here alone. Normally, this would be unthinkable, but it probably didn't matter since they likely didn't expect Kiol to perform his escort duties adequately anyway. Deciding to investigate this new development further, Uther completely shifted his focus. Just then, all members of the cavalry lined up neatly behind Keshir as the Emperor and Empress rose from their seats. The Emperor broke his years-long silence, speaking before the crowd of citizens who were gazing at him intently. Today, I stand before you to express my gratitude to the heroes who have bravely confronted the threats to our empire and returned without the help of anyone else. His voice, amplified through magic, resounded high and far, silencing the crowd. Even under the weight of hundreds, thousands of eyes focused solely on him, the Emperor continued to speak without faltering. He talked about the enormous crisis caused by the sudden outbreak of monsters in the western regions this year, citing the massive damage suffered by neighboring nations. He also subtly touched upon the illegal trade that was taking place in the west, tacitly approved by the nobles who were supposed to be protecting the area. The Emperor's ability to praise the cavalry's deeds while skillfully reprimanding the wrongdoers was undoubtedly in Keshir's bloodline. At first, the citizens were merely intrigued by the fact that the Emperor had spoken, but as they listened, they became increasingly engrossed. The atmosphere improved even more as Keshir cleverly redirected the cavalry's accomplishments towards the Emperor and the Empire. Eventually, cheers and applause filled the square at the end of each of the Emperor's sentences. Several nobles, including Duke Diarca, wore stone-faced expressions upon seeing the crowd's reaction. As the speech neared its end, the air in the square palpably simmered with excitement. And so I will bestow appropriate rewards to the commander, Kishir Lahore, and the 330 members of the cavalry, along with everyone who assisted in this endeavor. A party has been arranged in the imperial palace to celebrate. Do not decline, but enjoy. I sincerely thank you for your efforts in saving the West. With the conclusion of the emperor's words, the square erupted into the loudest cheer yet. As a bouquet of flowers tossed by someone brushed against his hair and fell to the ground, Yudhir momentarily forgot all the serious thoughts he'd been harboring and looked up at the sky. Bright flower petals floated endlessly under the crystal clear blue sky. The spectacle was remarkably similar to the day when he had felt breathless, yet what lay before his eyes was entirely different. Yudhir felt a shiver run down his spine as he looked at Kishir, who stood confidently before him, smiling with ease. The cavalry's first welcome ceremony ended flawlessly, without any issues. Returning to the cavalry headquarters after a long time, everything remained unchanged. Still, charged with excitement, the members listened as Kishir briefly announced a week-long vacation and a bonus multiple times their monthly salary, encouraging them to enjoy their time off before heading upstairs. Half of the members immediately left to drink, while the rest headed to their quarters for some much needed rest. Yudhir was, of course, among the latter. Although many comrades wanted to detain him, his close friends deterred them by mentioning his possible lingering injuries, allowing him to quickly leave. Carrying his bag and walking toward his room, Yudhir remembered a somewhat enigmatic gesture that Kishir had left him with before heading upstairs. He definitely winked at me, but I can't figure out why. It could simply be that he was in a good mood, but the expression seemed to hold a deeper meaning. The problem was that Yudhir couldn't guess what it could be. After setting down his luggage and washing up, Yudhir thought he would head to his room. Standing in front of his room, a sight he hadn't seen for quite some time, Yudhir took a deep breath before grasping the doorknob. Opening the door without giving it much thought, he saw the inside and promptly shut it again. What the? Doubting his eyes, he cautiously opened the door once more, but the view inside remained unchanged. After staring at the bewildering sight for a good while, he finally stepped in and closed the door behind him. What on earth is this? Yudhir's small room, which was suitable for a single person to live in, was originally clean enough to be emptied at any moment if he packed up his clothes and belongings. But now the room he saw was covered in countless flowers, as if the entire square he had just left had been transplanted into it. No matter how many times he closed and opened his eyes, the view did not change. Who could have possibly bought so many flowers here, and why? The identity of the culprit was beyond doubt. Yudhir recalled a paper flower Kishir had left for him during a night in the Great Serene Forest. Celebrating your recovery, the real thing will come later. The flower, with those words written on it, was still hidden deep in Yudhir's luggage where no one could find it. Could this be the real thing? So absurd that it made him laugh. Yudhir carefully tried not to step on the flowers that reached up to his ankles, but eventually he gave up and tossed his bag onto the flower-covered bed. The thorn petals stuck to Yudhir's clothes and skin as they landed with a rustling sound. The fragrant and subtle aroma strongly penetrated his nostrils and seeped into his chest. Closing his eyes momentarily against the almost dizzying fragrance, Yudhir found himself already outside his room, running up the stairs to the top floor. Without bothering to knock, he opened the door that revealed itself in the blink of an eye. The man standing behind the desk near the window of the commander's room turned his head, flipping his hair back. Just as the man started to form a playful smile, opening his mouth to say something, Yudhir leapt toward him. The scent transformed into heat in an instant.